Have mercy. NFL draft week is finally here. We can't wait, but we're also so exhausted. Could it be that we'll finally get a fresh perspective on a Patriots draft path to success? Enter at Scout D NFL, one of the fastest rising stars of the player evaluation and film breakdown world, to join us for what we hope is our final preview of the 2025 NFL draft. Here we go. Fitzy GFY, Scout DFL, 6 rings. Here it is.
Hey, whatever it takes, man. It's all about winning, all right? Win on 3. 1, 2, 3, win!
Celebrating the heroes of Foxborough's past.
Hannah with a good block. Look at Grover. All the way. Watch the block of number 73, John Hannah.
The champions of the dynastic era.
Adam Vinatieri booms a 48-yard field goal, and the Patriots are Super Bowl champions.
The Patriots of tomorrow.
We're going to remove entitlement from our football team. We're going to earn the right to be here every single day.
And the fans whose faith never wavers. This is 6 Rings and Football Things.
All right. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate everybody who made it this far. It is officially and finally 2025 NFL Draft Week. So give yourselves a round of applause for being able to make it this far, everybody. It wasn't easy. We know what a slog and a grind it has been, but we promise there will be significant draft ROI today as your old pal Nick Fitzy Stevens at Fitzy GFY welcome somebody that I've been following for a while now, have been very impressed by, and have been looking forward to getting on the podcast to get the final word on what would be a successful Patriots draft and who are some of the diamonds in the rough remaining over the 7 rounds that'll take place this week in Green Bay. Believe it or not, he's a Canadian Patriots fan who just happens to know his ball, his players, and the field of play as good as anyone else that I've seen on the Twitter machine. Ladies and gentlemen, at Scout D NFL and from ScoutDNFL.com, Daniel Rotman joins the podcast. What's up, buddy? And welcome finally. It's a pleasure and a long time in the making.
Fitzy, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a great week right now. Obviously, it can get a little tough in these last couple of days, but nothing to complain about. We got the draft in a couple of days, so I'm excited to be on, and let's talk some ball.
As one viewer right now on Twitter says, welcome to Jalen Walker week. A polarizing pick potentially at number 4 for the Patriots. We'll get to what the Patriots can and should do at number 4, as well as some other possible picks throughout the rest of the draft as well. Of course, 1 pick in the 2nd, 2 in the 3rd, and then some other ones. I guess I heard they got something for Joe Milton as well that was more than just like a pack of trading cards and some bubble gum. Real quick first, though, how did you get into this?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, always been a huge NFL fan. In particular, the draft was my favorite thing just since I was a kid. I remember first draft watching that Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin draft as one of the first ones and kind of fell in love with the process. And so I always kind of spent a lot of time researching the draft and doing player evaluation from a young age. And then when COVID hit and when I got some extra time, I decided why not put this together into something a little more tangible and kind of just make it, something published. So I went and did it for the first time, watched a lot of film on a lot of these guys, created my own website and just started from there. You got to start somewhere. So obviously it was a kind of a long process of learning a lot of things. And I think, my product now and kind of what I'm able to put out now is a lot better than what it was maybe 4 years ago.
Sure.
But yeah, kind of just stemmed from a love for the draft and yeah.
It's interesting because you've got some of your player evaluation stalwarts like your Daniel Jeremiahs and your Brian Baldingers and the Matt Millers and whatnot who have been doing it for decades, or they're former players with great insight in that, on the field perspective. And then there are some folks that have just sort of like the Ben Solaks, like Warren Sharp and now yourself, like people that, kind of came from out of nowhere. And next thing you know, not only is the insight and evaluation you're bringing to the process unique and new, but also like last year, I think it wasn't like a two victory lap oriented tweet, but at the same time, it was sort of like, let me see if I can just pat myself a tiny little bit here. Like you basically nailed, like I think 8 of your 10 favorite players going into last year had crushed it in 2024. So obviously things are working out for you, and you've built quite a following rather quickly. So, and the fact that you're a Pats fan as well, you want to evaluate all the players as evenly as possible, with just a little bit of favor curried towards Foxborough, as we all hope the Pats nail this draft. It's an important one, a very important one as well. So let's just sort of go with what you give me your sort of overall overarching feel for what you think the Patriots really need to address heading into this draft, with the needs they present on the roster following a very aggressive free agency that was highly defensive oriented.
Yeah, for sure. I think, the obvious elephant in the room is offensive tackle. And it seems to be tracking that way at 4, which I'm sure we'll discuss a little bit more. But I think if you don't go tackle at 4, that's something that you have to essentially address at 38. Like, obviously, I'm someone who's kind of been a best player available mentality. But if you decide not to go that route at number 4, it's essentially a must at 38 or through a trade up. I think we obviously watched things last year pan out, and with a new quarterback or a young quarterback coming in, we need to address that. It's pretty obvious. And I think kind of what I was alluding to before is we'll get a natural bump from going from Alex Van Pelt to Josh McDaniels just based on those blocking schemes. But at the end of the day, it's not enough. And we've kind of seen it year after year. If you want to compete in this league, if you want to win games late in the season, you need to develop your O-line. And I think we've done a good job in terms of, adding to the short-term value of this unit, but just continuing to build through that is definitely going to be the main priority, I would say.
Yeah, I have wanted the Patriots to have, and this is where I keep getting in my own way and act once again as my own worst enemy, but it's kind of a hallmark of my time here on earth as well as my fandom. Yeah, I have wanted the Patriots to have I've been saying basically that, unsexy is the new sexy. I want you to have a boring, strong, beefy, trench-filled draft to solidify both sides of the ball, because that's really where, as we just saw in Super Bowl 59 once again, the 2 times Patrick Mahomes has lost in the Super Bowl, it's been because his line couldn't block and the other team's line couldn't be stopped. So if you build an aggressive, stout, a fundamentally sound defensive line, and then a big, strong, nasty offensive line, you can do things in the NFL. Eventually, then your quarterback or your running back that can squat 600 pounds can get places. Eventually, your receivers will get open no matter how good the coverage is. So that's what frustrates me so much about pick number 4, because while they should have definitely had the first overall pick, shout out Gerard Mayo and Joe Milton for winning the game that they shouldn't have, potentially somebody who could be a 10-year member of the Patriots in a guy like Will Campbell will be there. And that could be the blindside protector that Drake May so desperately needs. And yet there's still something about pulling the trigger on a guy that people keep saying, like, well, he might be a guard in the NFL. We're not sure if he's a tackle. I guess just concerns me a little bit. Who do you think would be the best pick? Let's say they address the need right there at 4. Don't go Jalen Walker. Abdul Carter doesn't fall to them. So therefore my hype about, Philadelphia and New England doing business is a moot point. Who would you pick at tackle number 4 if given the chance?
Yeah. So, I'll answer that. And I think before I do, what I would say is, if I was the Patriots and my intel could guarantee that I could possibly move up for a Josh Simmons, in the 20s range, or have my pick at offensive tackle at 38, I would go that route, of course. But unfortunately, that's not the case. You never know how things are going to pan out. I don't see that big of a drop off from those tackles to the next options that we could get through a move up or at 38. But again, you don't know if those guys are going to be there. So it's an enormous risk where if you don't take one at 4, you might end up essentially with nothing. And you might have Vidarian Lowe or a 3rd round rookie starting in your place, which frankly, we can't really have happen. So that's the tough thing with 4. If your intel is so strong that you think you can move up for Josh Simmons and it's nearly a lock, go for it. But if it's not suggesting that, then I think you're kind of boxed into taking one of Campbell or Membu at 4. It's a tough conversation. I think for me, Campbell probably makes a little bit more sense for the Patriots specifically. Membu is actually my high rated tackle on my board by 1 spot. I think it's 6 versus 7 right now on my published board. But that's to say that I am more confident in Membu at right tackle than I am with Campbell at left tackle. But I think I would say that I would bet on Campbell playing left tackle over Membu. So it's really depending on the nature. It's like if you draft Membu here, what's your contingency plan with Morgan Moses, and what are you doing at left tackle if that doesn't pan out? Because if you take Membu, you're coming into camp, you're hoping that he can play left tackle. But if he can't, it's a much, much worse scenario where sure, you're going to have your long-term right tackle, but you're at a pretty big disadvantage in terms of what you could have had in year one there. So I personally think Campbell can stick at 4. Do I think he's worth it at 4 in most drafts in a vacuum? Probably not. But at the same time, I don't think this is most drafts. I think there's a pretty big lack of talent after the first 2 guys. And so I don't think it's that big of a reach in this type of draft is what I would say.
Yeah, I've heard NFL insiders, Pat's beat guys and whatnot that I've watched, I've listened to, I've read, and that we've had on the radio station say, basically from pick 4 on, pick 4 through 12, 4 through 20, etc. It is a plateau of talent. So you get what 4 could be as talented as 9, 6 is just as good as 12. So in that particular case, that's why I think a lot of people now almost want to see the Patriots trade back and potentially accrue more talent to be able to address more needs in the draft. Will Campbell feels like a settle in some ways, I guess. It's interesting you say that Membu's the better tackle, but Will Campbell likely there's more certainty that he'll make the better left tackle as well. I guess that makes sense as well because Membu played right. And the Patriots don't want to keep trying to. They messed around with Trent Brown. He was at left, then he went to right and back to left. They tried Caden Wallace last year on both sides. He definitely has some growing, learning, and stewing to do. And yeah, Morgan Moses, I don't want to flip him to left now because he's better at right. Like, I think they just need to decide where they want people to play. Don't take an Alex Cora with the Red Sox approach of like, oh, you're the second baseman today, then you'll be in left, then you'll be in center, then you'll be at third, then you'll DH over the course of a week. Like, figure out where people are best at and then pick them. If it's any consolation to you or any fans, we had an event last week at a brewery on the South Shore of Boston to raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And we had a number of Pat's beat writers and analysts up on stage with us. Andrew Callahan, Doug Kyed, Jeff Howe, Mark Daniels, Michael Hurley, and to a man, and Mike Giardi. And all 6 of them agreed Will Campbell's going to be the pick Thursday night, probably around 8:30 at number 4 overall for the Patriots. So I'm with you. I wish they would pick something different at 4 and then try to trade back in for that tackle. You like Simmons the most out of all those potential alternative tackle options?
Yeah, I think Simmons is a really interesting prospect because he obviously had that knee injury kind of mid-season there at Ohio State. But before that, he was potentially tracking to be the first offensive tackle off the board. And I think in terms of pure film, he's arguably the best tackle in the class. Pure left tackle, great pass protector, good athlete. Obviously some things to improve on like everyone else. But I think when you're talking about just the cleanest overall tackle prospect, it could be Josh Simmons. So obviously the injury complicates things. I have someone who kind of does some work for me just on the medical side of things, just to assess some of the prospects and kind of get a gauge for that. And he didn't seem too worried about Simmons' long-term health, which is a positive. But again, kind of just going back to my point before, it's in an ideal scenario, like it's very easy for me to sit here and kind of say, take this guy at 4 and then trade up for Simmons. But again, like when push comes to shove, we don't know what's going to happen. And, Simmons might go 13th or 15th or before that mark where we can go trade up for him. You might have competing interests, teams like the Chiefs who want to jump the Texans, and all these different things coming together that kind of might put a fork in that plan. So it's just tough to kind of base your plan on contingencies and hope for the best. I think in an ideal world, we move up for him and we can take who we want at 4, but I just don't know how much risk tolerance we really have for that.
Okay, so let's say Mike Vrabel decides to do what he did when he first got back to Boston and gamble, as with the viral photo of him at the Encore playing poker at 1 a.m. Okay, he says, you know what, this is what I want to do, and I'm gonna take the best player available at 4th overall. Again, I think most of us agree the Giants are with signing Russell Wilson and famous Jameis. They're probably none of these other quarterbacks are worth taking at 3. We can agree that, correct? Outside of Cam Ward.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Seems like it. I mean, we could get a shocker. You never know, and it seems to be tracking the other way. And obviously, the draft's unpredictable. But just for the purposes, we'll kind of operate under that assumption for this conversation.
Sure. Yeah. Anything's possible. Somebody could
Yeah.
get taken way too early at quarterback, like a Christian Ponder, or many other years where who's the guy that was taken by the Tennessee Titans?
Locker.
Yeah, the Hurt Locker. Oh
Yeah.
boy, they're still regretting that one. So you could have something like that where somebody just chooses outright chaos and overreaches at need for the most important position on the field, or everybody could try to just play it smart and in a blue chip, a draft that is bereft of a lot of blue chips, just get in there and grab the guys. So let's say it goes Ward and then Hunter and then Carter goes 3 to the Giants. Just taking best player available, who would that be at 4?
I mean, this goes against kind of everything. I know you're a fan of this guy in terms of the pick, and goes against everything that I've said. But purely taking best player available is Ashton Genty on my board. But the thing is, I am very against that pick personally.
No.
I know that's not what you want to hear. And
man,
I've kind of
the
gone.
D stands for disappointment in
I know.
Scout D NFL.
I've kind of gone back and forth with a lot of people on this conversation this week. The thing is, I'm not against taking a running back early. It just completely depends on the team doing it. Like, you could be sitting at 1, and if you're in the right position to be taking a running back, go for it. Like, for example, the Lions, they were ridiculed for taking a running back at 12, but they had one of the best offensive lines in the league. They were competing in the playoffs. They had essentially no holes, and Jahmyr Gibbs was kind of the missing piece for them. Whereas you look at the opposite side of the coin, and you have a team like the Giants, who probably reflect a lot more of what the Patriots truly are than the Lions. And Saquon has panned out exactly how you would expect him to pan out. But if you gave them a do-over 10 times out of 10, they would take that pick. And so I've kind of just been saying that there's no doubt Ashton Genty would help this team, but you don't put the icing on the cake before you bake it. And I think from a fan perspective, don't get me wrong, if I didn't do any of this draft stuff, I would probably be rooting for Ashton Genty too, because there's no doubt that that's the most entertaining pick. And so I get why it's hard to kind of stray away from that, because it is fun. You want to see that electric playmaker that we haven't really had here in New England for so long. But part of me has to kind of be an adult in the room and say, look, we've made upgrades, but we're still returning one of the worst offensive lines in the league. And these guys are short-term solutions. And it's like, there are so many other players to be had here that could impact us at more important positions and help us right away. And it's just, I don't know. I think it's a tough conversation, but yeah, I think purely best player available, you're probably taking Ashton Genty. But in terms of most impactful player on the board that's not a tackle, it's going to be one of those defenders in Mason Graham or Jalen Walker, who I personally like a lot.
Okay, so you do like Jalen Walker. So if Mike Vrabel says the hell with what everybody else thinks, I'm actually going to continue stockpiling my defense, because the offense I trust is a work in progress. We'll add to the line during the draft. I'll let Josh see if he can squeeze anything out of last year's offensive draft picks. Jalen Walker, good off-ball linebacker, also had 34 pressures last year. Certainly not as many as Abdul Carter, but you'd be okay with that pick. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, I've been big on the Jalen Walker fan side of things. I think, he's someone that you want to bet on him. Like, I get that people think he's a tweener and, is he a linebacker? Is he an edge? The way I look at it is, this guy just turned 21 years old, and he was a natural linebacker who was so talented that they had to start playing him on the edge because of that talent. And so people are like, oh, well, he's not good enough to play edge. You're looking at the product of what he is now after not even a season of experience at edge. And this kid is going to come in and work every single day, has some of the best leadership and work ethic skills. So for him to be that good playing the edge position this early on in his development, and then you pair that work ethic, that's someone that I want to bet on. So, it's obviously tough. I think if you do that, kind of going back to what I was saying before, you have to get aggressive and make that move up for a tackle. But yeah, I think Jalen Walker is going to be a phenomenal player.
And people need to remember as well, and it's tough when your team has so many needs and you want to see them try to compete for a wild card or get back to relevance or, God forbid, winning. They want immediate impact. Well, sometimes you have to get some impact and just let them develop because the game changes. It's more complex. People are stronger and faster. These are the best of the best. Just because you're the best at Georgia, just because you're the best in the SEC, doesn't mean that you're going to be the best in the AFC or the AFC East, let alone the NFL as well. So preaching patience is important, difficult though that may be for a pill to swallow for Pats fans. One other guy up top at 4, and then we can move our way down low rounds. A lot of people have fallen in love with Tyler Warren because they think they could see Gronk Part 2, Penn State Boogaloo coming in, and maybe if the Pats trade back a couple spots, you bring him in. Hunter and Hooper are both 31, so they're definitely playing on the later holes of the back 9 of their career, but they're still very, very good players. Yet I don't think Tyler Warren is your highest rated tight end, is he?
No. I like Tyler Warren. I think he's going to be a good player in the league. I think on my board, I had him finishing somewhere around 25. So I think he's going to be a really solid starting tight end in the league. But I think people have kind of developed this image of him that he's going to be this next grade and this Brock Bowers level prospect. And frankly, I just don't think he's that. The reason I like Colson Loveland a little more is just that natural separation ability. If I'm taking a tight end that early, they have to be good enough in the sense of route running and just separation and creating for themselves that they can be the focal point of your offense. And I think Tyler Warren's more of a guy who kind of has those tools to go to a really good scheme and reap the benefits of it and produce a lot. But I don't think he's the guy who on 3rd and 7, I was kind of saying this yesterday, is he going to be able to win by himself? No scheme, one-on-one, what Gronk would do consistently. Just get those man looks and beat them. And I think that's what Colson Loveland is. And that's not to say that Tyler Warren isn't a good player, but I think if I'm going tight end that early, or I'm spending a 1st-round pick on a tight end, I think it really has to be a guy that can create for themselves consistently.
So Colston Loveland is a better individual creator in terms of just getting open and making dynamic offensive plays. Is there anyone in the NFL right now or in recent memory you could comp him to?
Yeah, so I would say on the high end of the spectrum, obviously not in terms of just like talent or projection, but similarities stylistically, I see a lot of Travis Kelce, just someone who's, hyper athletic, twitchy, can create for themselves, run the full route tree. And then a little more realistic, I think he's kind of what people wanted Dalton Kincaid to be, that really long athletic pass catcher who can beat you downfield, who can run the full route tree. So I think he's similar to Dalton Kincaid, but he's much more athletic. He's, I think, bigger, he's faster, he's stronger. So I think you kind of get both of those sides of the coin.
Okay. All right, cool. And just, full disclosure, I married into a Michigan family, so I love to hear that as well. Go Blue.
Of course.
And of course, we have a history of loving the accomplishments and contributions of many a Michigan player in Foxborough at one Tom Brady place. Okay, interesting. So Loveland over Warren as well. Genty would be great, but that's too early. All right, so let's get into rounds just 2 through 7, and let's throw me a couple of guys that you have seen pop either at running back or wide receiver, because the Patriots have said there's been no admission that they want to get. I don't know how they're going to address the wide receiver position. If they want to get a big outside X guy, if they want to get another Welker, Edelman slot, get open in a Italian sports car or phone booth type. There has been a lot of buzz about the Patriots, Daniel, trying to get a traditional 3rd down back in again to reignite the James White, Shane Vereen, Danny Woodhead legacy. So are there any guys that have caught your eye or that you think would be great fits with the Patriots in that regard?
Yeah, for sure. It does seem like that's kind of the way it's tracking, just that pure 3rd down back to get back to the old way of Patriots football. They're good for us. There are a lot of good pass catchers at running back in this draft. A couple names that come to mind, I think RJ Harvey's one. A little bit older, so he might go a bit later. LaQuint Allen from Syracuse.
I've heard that name. I've heard that name a lot. Somebody said he might be a little too stiff and upright, and some other people said that he's only just discovering the tip of his talents.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. I think from a pure receiving skill set, he's one of the best in the draft. Like, he's not going to give you that much juice in the run game, but from a pure receiving skill set, he He's a really, really thorough route runner. And I'd say the same thing about Brashard Smith, who's a really interesting one. That's actually a converted receiver. So I think in his first year of college, or it might have been in high school, he was playing receiver, converted to running back. So he's really new to the position, but clearly developing in the right way. So I think that's a bet that you would want to make, where you might have Antonio Gibson right there, who can kind of play that role year one. Brashard Smith can contribute a little bit there, and over time he's going to get a lot better. So that's a name I really like. And then potentially even deeper, Woody Marks from USC. Okay. So I would say a lot of these guys, lucky for us, there's a lot of good pass catchers at running back. If you venture away from that kind of pass catching third down running back mold, a guy that I've talked about a lot, who I think is going to be a great value, is Devin Neal, who might not be the versatile, pure third down, twitchy running back, but he's a well-rounded guy who he can pass catch a lot. And I think he's essentially just good at everything. And he's one of those guys where he doesn't necessarily have the elite athleticism that you'd like, but everything else, it's like, this guy knows how to play football. Just the vision, the ability in the phone box, the production. Like, this is a guy that is going to produce in the NFL. So if we don't end up just purely going for that third down mold, I think Devin Neal is a guy that I would love to see in New England.
There's a lot of love in the chat right now for Devin Neal as well, and RJ Harvey. Brashard Smith could be interesting because the Patriots already have a former wide receiver converted to running back on the roster, and Antonio Gibson, who had a stronger second half of 2024 than Ramondre Stevenson, who's an excellent back. But, he's taken a lot of hits, puts the ball on the carpet too much. And that's left me wondering if they want to go with a bigger feature back to, use Ramondre this year, and that'll be the end of his time in Foxborough. Yeah. Develop him, I'm not saying go full Derrick Henry, Daniel, but you know what I mean? Like, does Mike Vrabel want to put more toughness back there, or speed, or can he find a combination of the two?
Yeah, I think one other guy that's interesting to look at, who they actually visited with, who I would probably say is the most likely pick, is Trevor Etienne from Georgia.
Who just visited, by the way, put in his stories that he had a top 30.
Yeah, so that's another player I really like. He kind of fits what you were saying. He has that 4.4 speed, a little bit smaller, but solid frame overall. I think he can handle a workload, and he's also a great pass catcher. So I think that's someone who can kind of fit both roles, and you start him as this third down complementary back, and hopefully over time, he can take on a more expanded role. But
okay, and as far as the receivers go, I saw you did a nice workup and deep dive on somebody that I got in on early. And I love hearing about guys and then watching another analyst talk about them and then seeing another one that I trust get into them. There was a lot of hype last year behind Javon Walker, and then a confluence of bad decisions, immature behavior, and whatnot led to him having a, shall we say, mildly disappointing rookie season. I think he's going to get another shot to pop, or at least become a positive contributor this year. But one guy, this year's version of Javon Walker, aka Javon Baker, aka the guy that I'm falling in love with too. I'm not even going to get into how mad I still am, as some commenters and viewers and listeners will know, about the Pats passing on McConkey last year.
Yeah.
But Jack Besh is somebody I love. Tough as nails, gets open, finds ways to get open, catches everything. Is there an NFL offense, period, let alone a Patriots team, where he wouldn't be a great fit?
Yeah, 100%. Jack Besh is someone that I've loved. Got to watch him up close at the Senior Bowl, and kind of like you said, this guy's just a magnet. And he's someone where when he was, I think it was a freshman, he was in a wide receiver room with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., and he led that room in receptions. So this is a guy who's been doing it for a while. And, just physical guy, tough as nails, like you said, and really mature. Like, you get to see these guys up close at the Senior Bowl and really kind of see their personality and the way they carry themselves. And I was really impressed with Jack Besh. So, great after the catch too. Former tight end, and you can really tell, like, the way that this guy just has that size, but he's also super coordinated after the catch, elite at the catch point. So I think that's someone who has such a high floor, but also such a high ceiling. And I've kind of consistently said it. I think that's someone who walks into a room and Mike Vrabel loves him. So I could definitely see that. Jalen Noel's kind of been the guy that I've been pounding the table for quite a while.
I just watched a whole big thing on him this morning. Brian Hoyer joined our pals Tom Curran and Phil Phil Perry over at NBC Sports Boston and watched film on a ton of guys. And I had a feeling we would reach this intersection or this inflection point this morning during the pod. Brian Hoyer is just in love with Jalen Noel. He said he's a faster version of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
He's incredible.
Is he really?
He's
talk to me,
unbelievable.
Goose.
He's the one guy where I like stopped in my tracks while I was watching him. And, I kind of, when I go through my rankings, I like to look at where these guys are projected just for, just to have a basis of where most people think they are. And I remember posting initially in December when I started this work, and Jalen Noel was projected to go 167th overall in the 6th round. And I was like, what? And, over time, he's had such a good draft process, with the combine and the Senior Bowl, and he's hit every single checkpoint, and now he's projected more in the 60s range. But for me, he's my 28th overall player. So I think this is someone who Ladd McConkey was, I think, my 19th, 20th overall player last year. This is someone who I think can follow suit. Just a guy who and here's the thing is, he's a lot bigger than Ladd McConkey too. Like, people think Jalen Noel's this like small little guy. He's almost 200 pounds. And I saw him up close. He's strong. He's physical, incredible route runner. He has all the athleticism you want. Can run the full route tree. And the other thing is, I interviewed this guy at the Senior Bowl. I've talked to him. I've interacted with him on Twitter. Yeah, great guy. So I think this is a guy who you want in your locker room. Super nice guy. I think he can do everything. And frankly, this is someone that I'll put my stamp on. Like, this is a guy who can come in and do it for a long time in the NFL.
All right. So Jalen Noel officially gets the Scout D NFL stamp of approval. Tough, built, ready for the next level. And if you tell me, seriously, like, now I'm getting my Foxborough feels going on right now, Daniel. If you tell me that Jalen Noel has the kind of talent to possibly pop at the next level and make people like myself forget that they screwed up so badly last year by not taking McConkey, trading out, and then going for Jalen Polk, I am all ears. And the popcorn that I've had getting stale on the counter for the last year because of Javon Baker, I will have it in hand. See, that would be great. So if you're going to tell me they're going to go early, they're going to take Will Campbell, like, all right, I hope he turns out to be the badass he says he is, squatting 600 pounds and winking at the camera. And then they get Jalen Noel, maybe in a trade. Might be risky waiting to 69. Do you think they might have to just trade up a whisker to get him?
Yeah, you might have to trade up from 69, or maybe you trade back. I don't know. But, ideally, like, my dream, let's just pencil in Will Campbell at 4, just say that's what they do, and it's not my choice. I think my dream draft might be a little unrealistic, but you trade up for Colson Loveland from 38 to like 21 just before the Chargers if Denver ends up passing on him. Okay. And then Jalen Noel gets to you at 69. To me, that's 3 legitimate offensive studs for you right there. I don't know how likely that is, but that would be. That's
all right. No. This is silly season.
Nothing's impossible.
No, come on. Kevin Garnett told us anything is possible 17 years ago. I've been living in that reality. And then Tom Brady made the impossible possible for a long time.
Exactly.
And we need to get back there. We need to have a kind of draft that not only makes us proud and gets us excited about football, but that makes us so braggadocious that we hop up on Twitter and then we, hit up the hashtag Bills Mafia and let them know to look behind their back, because here come the Patriots once again. Like,
for sure.
That's what I'm talking about. All right, listen, you've been more than generous with your time. This has been great. I feel like now I'm honing in on some guys I'm really going to be rooting for the Patriots to zero in on in the first couple of rounds. Any other last names, just randomly, offense, defense, or wherever, that you like in the Scout D NFL profile that you'd like to chum the waters for Pats Nation with?
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you one name, but before I do that, I think just the wide receiver class in general, like my first 10 guys, I think there are a lot of good wide receivers in this class. So, even if you can't get a Knoll or a Betch, Kyle Williams from Washington State's another one who great route runner. And I think a lot of these guys, like when you're looking at McDaniels' system, you want guys who are more similar to Stephon Diggs, who can run that full route tree and understand how to get open by themselves. So a lot of these guys, Trey Harris is another great value who, could potentially slip to 69.
Oh, the old miss receiver. You like him?
Who I like him a lot. Jaden Higgins, like all these guys, there's a lot of talent at the wide receiver position. There's one guy I really like who's projected maybe in like the 5th round, somewhere on day 3, 4th round. Ainias Peebles from Virginia Tech. very random defensive lineman who's going pretty late. I think we could probably get him on day 3. But what I'll say about this guy is when I initially do my evaluations, I try to go through as many prospects as I can. And I did around 160, and I didn't get to him at first, but I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and, he blew up 3 plays straight, and he just got up there and celebrated and kind of brought the energy all week. So I was really impressed with him there. And then I went back, watched the film, and this guy's just so disruptive. He's someone who might fall because his frame isn't necessarily the prototypical type for that position. The arm length, I think, is a little bit shorter. He's a little bit more stocky, but someone who just gets after it. He's always in the backfield. He's always celebrating after the play. And I think those are the guys you want on your defensive line, those enforcers who just continuously bring it. So I think it would be great to just add more defensive line pieces on day 3. And yeah, Anais Peebles is one of those guys for me.
That just sounds like that guy was just carved from or just produced on the factory line at the Mike Vrabel School of Football. Like
exactly.
That sounds like Vrabel 101 right there.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, listen, yeah. And as a commenter points out, Drake May needs a friend on Twitter. We also need a center as well. Curious to I know there's so many people. There's Ben Brown, then they bring in Bradbury, and then Cole Strange is going to take some snaps. So it's going to be a 3-man competition to see who the best center is. But I wouldn't be surprised as well to see the Pats take some defensive line and even guard related. Maybe Layden Robinson gets the job at left guard, or maybe they grab another guy and just create a nasty ass competition. That's what they want. They want a fast, mean, aggressive team on both sides of the ball. So that a guy like Peebles or people like that on the offensive line wouldn't surprise me at all either, Dan.
100%.
Love it. All right, folks, you can follow, you can read his work at scoutdnfl.com. And of course, you already follow him at scoutdnfl. He provides some of the best breakdowns, analysis, and more. And he doesn't just do it from a little box with really good Wi-Fi and an OLED screen. He travels to the games. You heard he talked to Jalen Noel at the Senior Bowl as well. So he's out there pushing the paper and pounding the pavement to make sure that the information he's bringing you is top shelf. And best of all, folks, he cares because he's a Pats fan, just like the rest of us. Any final bon mots or fare thee wells for Pats Nation as we head into this pivotal first draft for Mike Vrabel, Daniel?
Yeah, I think, it's easy to get upset about the draft regardless of how it goes. And I think it's important just to look at where we are now versus where we were at the end of the season. We really have made a lot of additions this offseason, and just having that coaching upgrade going from, Alex Van Pelt and Gerard Mayo to Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels it's big. And I think no matter what happens in this draft, of course it's important, but I think the strides that we've made already are pretty significant. And there's a lot to be excited about as a Patriots fan now compared to last year.
And one of our regular viewers and listeners here, Pat Stats on YouTube Live. As far as that guard center late flyer toughness edition goes, Drew Kendall from BC seems perfect, can play guard, mass kid, and also knows Doug Marrone. Final thought on him?
Yeah, so I actually didn't do any work on Drew Kendall yet. Maybe one of the last guys that I try to add to the website. Try to do as many as I can. I think I got to like 185, but Drew Kendall wasn't one of them. But I mean, you can never go wrong with those tough BCO linemen, right?
Right. The local, everybody loves a good local hero story.
100%. So him and Ozzie Trapio, I'd love to see any of those guys on the
love
on the
to
roster.
see it. Fly Eagles, a different kind of Eagles. The hell with the other ones. All right, folks, thanks so much for tuning in to the latest Six Rings in Football Things, brought to you by Odyssey, 2400 Sports, and WEEI as well. Our thanks to Daniel Rotman. Make sure you follow him once again at ScoutDNFL for great film analysis, player breakdowns, and so much more. We will talk to you soon. Draft week is here. We'll be back later in the week with Brian Baldinger. And then, of course, Thursday night, make sure you are locked into WEEI for the Christian Arcand Show 2025 NFL Draft Spectacular. Me, Shime, Arcand, Mego, and so many more. And hopefully Daniel will catch up to you a few weeks after the draft and see what you thought of what the Patriots did and what the team's going to look like going forward. Okay, bud?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate finally having you. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. Take care. God